I moved to Austin a year ago. We live in Austin, and I don't know, a couple weeks in, we're at Chick-fil-A, and there's this cute girl working there. I've asked one girl in my life up to this point for her number, a random girl, and I was just like, dude, she's really cute, she's really sweet, I gotta do it. And he's like, you won't. And I was like, I got it. He's like, you won't. So I do it. Ends up, she's actually my fiance. I asked her to be.
Oh, no kidding!
Got engaged last week. So
good for you.
So this would be a
so
much
it can
more
work.
interesting pot.
So that's a much better story than mine.
Well, then that's the reason why probably...
Yeah, I'm finding my queen, but am I gonna find my queen?
It's just one. It just takes one. Yeah.
All right, but we got the we got those both.
Do you guys have any pickup girl stories?
I can. Yeah. We can.
Yes.
Happy anniversary.
Yep. 6th anniversary. She hasn't
Congrats.
me yet.
Let's go, dude. What's the key for Josiah?
Honestly, like, what is the key to a happy
wearing
marriage?
jewelry every day.
Oh, yes. I would say stay humble. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, when you spend a lot of time with anybody, no matter how great they are, it's easy to like wrestle, not in the good way.
Yeah.
And you want to avoid that at all costs. That's the key. You gotta just draw the line. You gotta say, this is what's important and that's what's not important. And if you draw that line and you don't cross it, it's amazing. Like life just kind of works itself out.
Is that similar for, I know we're kind of deep now, and I'm curious, for your portfolio companies, do you say that to your founders, or do you think that way for your founders as well?
I think there's definitely something that we all need to keep in mind, which is to stay focused, right? It's so easy to go off track, especially as we're being creative and building things, right? I mean, that's whether you're building companies or whether you're composing music or whatever, it's easy to just let our minds go astray. And once you do that, amazing things can happen. Also, catastrophic things can happen, So you got to put your own guardrails on.
You saying the humility thing is kind of the key to success in marriage. I just think of the C.S. Lewis quote that humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. And yeah, I've just found that to be true. Like I remember I was at a Bible study not long ago, and someone was asking like the group, like, what is humility? And I was just like, I don't actually know what humility is. And so I looked up, what is it? And found the C.S. Lewis quote. And I was like, yeah, okay, that kind of helps like just get my mind around how to do this practically in the everyday. And I think as I'm heading into being a husband and potentially being a father, and I just want to not think these bad thoughts, these defeating thoughts about why I'm not good enough or why I'm failing in this way, but instead just stop thinking about myself at all in general. Just start thinking about others more. And I feel like that's kind of the key to the key.
Yeah, good words to live by.
Yeah,
Sean, as a founder, and Qualified is extremely successful. You've raised a lot of money. Who cares about the money really? But I'm curious for you, how do you stay humble as being a part of a successful startup?
I mean, I think you said it pretty well, but at the end of the day, the older you get and the more experience you have, the more you realize that there's just a lot of things you don't know. And I think one of the benefits of being an experienced founder, this is my third startup, so we've had 2 exits, is we've made a lot of mistakes. And every time you make a mistake, you learn from it. And we've made a lot of them. And I think, at this point, it's pretty easy to stay humble and have humility when you see, all the competition out there. You learn from all the experiences that you've had. And I think at the end of the day, it's very easy to stay humble when you're experienced. When I was younger, in my first startup, we didn't even know when we were making mistakes. And now we see the mistakes down the road a little bit. So I think experience kind of lends itself to humility pretty naturally.
After that second exit, did you take some time to just not be making a company, or
the stress of being a founder?
Yeah. Did you kind of take a vacation, think about life for a little, or was it just you were already starting the third one while you're doing the second one?
We did. We took, when I say we, collectively, I've worked with the same group of guys for a really long time. In fact, my co-founder and I worked together for 27 years.
Wow.
So 3 companies, and this is our third one.
That's awesome.
yeah, we did take some time after we exited our last one. We took about a year, and it was interesting. Our two sort of, we've got two 10X engineers, Bing Yang, Gopal Patel, like rock stars, and our head of product design, a guy named Tani Sukanan. We all sort of did different things. Craig has a house up in wine country. He made wine. I spent a lot of time just with my family. I've got two daughters, and spent a lot more time with them. They're pretty young. And then those guys were coding crypto at the time, and Tani was working at Google. So we all kind of did different things, and then resettled, and we sort of started talking about this opportunity. And so we started the company about, just over 5 years ago.
I want to go backwards a little bit. You said there's been a lot of mistakes you've made, the company's made along the way. Is there a story you can remember of just a mistake that you made and it made you into the man that you are today, whether it's your first startup, your second, or even Qualified right now?
So many mistakes, we probably don't have time for it, to be honest. But, I'll kind of summarize. We've spent a lot of time on things that I think we don't spend as much time on today. One of the things that we talk about is, and Scott kind of alluded to it, is you have to make a lot of decisions. And we think about, optimizing our potential for getting lucky, right? So that's kind of how we make decisions. And some decisions you can make pretty quickly. And we talk about one-way doors and two-way doors. If it's a two-way door, don't talk about it too much. Go shoot your shot and see if it works. And if it doesn't, you can back out of it. Some things are one-way doors. They're more strategic decisions, and they have more consequences. So you talk about those a little bit more. So I think over time, what we've gotten really good at collectively as a team, and we've got a lot of history, which I think is important. We tend to spend the most amount of time talking about the most strategic, important decisions, and we spend less time talking about the things that we know in the long run don't matter as much.
I'm just curious, that leadership, it just interests me a lot. And it sounds like for you, you've been a leader to the same group of guys for potentially 20 plus years. Do they look to you as a kind of the leader of the group? And if they do, how do you keep up that relationship where you're their boss potentially, but at the same time, you're their friend? And I just can't imagine like leading such high level people who are so good at their job for that long. I'd imagine that's different than leading an entire company, like just leading a group of friends in that way. How do you do it? Is there a secret to it? And what are your thoughts on being a leader of a friend group in that way?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we were colleagues first and friends second. So we met in the workplace. We became, of course, friends over time. And the guys that I'm referring to, like our founding team, we have a lot of history, but we balance each other out really well. So we all know what we're good at. We all know what the others are good at. We divide and conquer really well. We have shared, macro qualities. Micro qualities, we have a lot of differences, and we have healthy arguments about everything. We kind of rely on one another. And again, like that's why we rely on Scott. Scott checks us. We want Scott to challenge us. That's why he's on our board.
You.
Yeah, he does.
See what you did there.
That was a good one.
So I think what we've kind of figured out over time is, we don't think in hierarchy at this point. We think in terms of, we're all a collective, and we have shared responsibilities, and we have ownership over certain areas of the company. But at the end of the day, I think we work really well together, and that's been, I think, like a big differentiating point for us.
Yeah.
Scott, we're curious about how y'all met. Can you take us back to the day that you met Sean? And if you both remember it differently, we'd love to hear both scenarios.
I think we were at Salesforce back in probably 2010, 2011 era, maybe.
Yeah.
2012, maybe even pushing it. Anyway, we were wrestling around on the R&D floor. I think Sean was yelling and screaming about, trying to build this thing called do.com, and I was building customer service software. Anyway, he was highly respected because they had built something prior to joining Salesforce that we liked enough to acquire it the first time around. And so, Sean had risen pretty quickly up the product management ranks, and he became a GM. And so my first exposure to Sean was, okay, well, here's the big guy on the block. See what this guy's up to. But no, he's like, what I found out really quick is that he was one of the most real people that you'll run into. And cutting through all the different layers of engineering and R&D and technical, blockers that stop everyone from building everything. He was the guy that just like broke down every barrier and got product out the door. And he was respected for that. I just remember that. That's one of my first things I remember about Sean.
I was a big fan of Beechuk. At Salesforce, it was kind of the formative years of Salesforce. It was when we first got acquired by Salesforce. I remember asking my friends, "Have you heard of something called Salesforce?" It's hard to imagine now.
Yeah.
And they would be like, "Yeah, I think our sales guys use it, or salespeople use it." So it was pretty early, and it was a very powerful, small-ish team. I think we were in the first 2,000 employees when we were acquired. We were the second acquisition that they did. And when you got into that machine, it was a lot of, it was a fast pace. And I had heard about Scott, and Scott, I had heard all these great things about Scott. So I was an admirer from afar. And later on, when we heard Scott had gotten into venture, Craig and I both said, like, hey, like what a great venture partner that he would be. Anybody who can get things done at Salesforce and ship product, which is not easy. We just a lot of people that were sort of trusted advisors to me, they all had great things to say about Scott. So we were sort of admirers from afar of Mr. Beechuk.
Hey, y'all. Do you enjoy listening to podcasts? Since you're listening to one right now, I'm going to assume you do. And if you enjoy podcasts, you need to download the Overlap app. We all love long-form podcast conversations, but who has the time to always stay up to date with 3-hour-long interviews? Overlap solves that problem for you by providing only the best podcast moments. The app's AI assistant curates playlists of personalized podcast clips that are tailored to your interests and favorite creators, like us. Just prompt it with any topic and instantly get a playlist of the best short-form moments. So jump over to the App Store now, like right now, and download Overlap. You can also find a link to download below in our description. It's free and we highly recommend it. The app actually does recommend great content, and I learn something new every day from my playlists. Thanks so much to Overlap for sponsoring this episode. So what did that look like, reaching out to Norwest when you were looking for funding for Qualified?
Yeah, so it was interesting because it was a weird time.
It was a really weird time. I mean, this was just to set the context. COVID was just setting in.
Oh, wow.
Like we were just starting to understand what this was going to look like. We're talking February, March 2020.
Perfect time to fundraise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I got a little bird, a little bird in my ear that Qualified might actually be raising their next round. In the VC industry, it's pretty small. And there's a lot of chatter about the companies that are doing really cool and interesting things. And, I think the best rounds tend to be preemptive rounds, not the rounds that the founders cook up and say, okay, we're going to go, try to raise a few dollars. It's when there's so much excitement around something that's so cool that all the best investors in the world want to, jump in and participate. Well, luckily, these guys took my call before it got to that point.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a little serendipitous. I mean, we had done a healthy seed, in fact, right around the corner from Redpoint. And all of a sudden, I've been an operator for a long time, and we were like, global pandemic. That's a new one. So we ended up thinking, we talked to Scott, and obviously Norwest, great company. And when we saw Scott go there, we were like, that's amazing for Scott. That's great. Makes perfect sense. We wanted operators. We wanted investors that were operators. And the two of the operators that we had the utmost respect for that got into venture were Alex Bard and Scott Beechuk. So it was a bit of an easy decision. And Scott was like, hey, we didn't know what was going to happen. It was a new thing for the entire planet. So Scott said, hey, it wouldn't hurt to put some more money in the bank. We don't know what's going to happen here. So we thought that was a good idea. And Scott put us through the paces on the round, but it was we're glad we did it for sure. I mean, Scott's been, obviously the financing is great, but it's been, that's not really what it was about at the time. It was about getting an experienced operator in the mix with us to help us navigate like these uncharted waters.
Over the years, what's been, the best advice you feel like you've gotten from Scott as you've received this financing from Norwest, but having him alongside, what's been some key advice that he's given to you?
What's the worst?
And also, yeah, sure. What's the worst? I'm joking. Not the worst.
I mean, look, it's been a tumultuous 5 years. I mean, we've encountered things that we haven't encountered before in our time as entrepreneurs. I mean, we had a global pandemic, we had the zero interest rate period, we have had obviously the tech recession or the resetting, whatever you want to call it, and we've also, of course, had the platform shift of AI. So a lot has been happening, right? And we've had to navigate things like going remote. That's not something we were used to, but we scaled pretty significantly during COVID. So Scott has been, for one, we rely on Scott to give us insight into what is happening. I mean, as founders, and maybe this is to a fault, we are maniacally focused on our customers. We don't spend a lot of time outside of our customers. Everything we do is about our customers. We spend as much time as possible with our customers. And a lot of times, like, you're blind to what's going on around you. So we rely on Scott to give us some insight into sort of like what's going on in the industry, what's going on, how are we doing? And then secondly, Scott's been a therapist. Scott is someone that we call just to bounce ideas off of, tell him what's going on, tell him what's going on with us. And we just talk things through. And that's been extremely valuable throughout the last couple of years, because there's been a lot of moments where we're just sort of struggling with, like, what should we do? How should we think about this? And so I think Scott's been a great therapist. And also he brings sort of like more of a macro level view of what's going on in our industry to us, which is really important.
Scott, do you remember what you said in the pitch when you called Sean and talked about how you kind of thought, Qualified is the real deal and I want in? Like, what did you do to sell that pitch?
Well, it was a little different because, what's important, again, the context here is that we were all friends.
Okay.
And so when I say I made the call, it was a call to somebody that I already had in my speed dial. And so it was an easy call to make. It was one of those where I just said, hey, are you guys ready to do something? Because, it was really early days. I mean, early product, like no customers, that kind of scenario. But I trust these guys because I've seen him go 0 to 1. I've seen him go bigger than that. And, I think Sean said it earlier, but this is all about the speed bumps and how you get through them. And, like, life is all about building relationships that endure. We were talking about that earlier. And that's what this is really all about. It's about having the trust to work together, knowing there's going to be these nasty speed bumps and potholes along the way. But I wanted to work with these guys no matter what they were doing. It just so happened they were building something super freaking cool. And that helped a lot. It helped me get excited and move, of course, faster. But I probably would have worked with them if they were doing something different. I mean, that's because, again, life is short. Work with people you love and that you trust. And that was really my initial, the genesis of it.
Speaking of, Sean, what is Qualified and why are you passionate about it?
Yeah, Qualified's a pipeline generation platform. And you can think about, historically, people have used marketing automation platforms. We talk about pipeline a lot, and we want to generate more qualified, see how we did that, pipeline for B2B companies. So we recognized a big opportunity in that there's so much data that is yielded by, SaaS applications. And we realized that GTM, go-to-market groups, didn't have like a way to action on that data. So we really wanted to build a data platform that enabled companies to just make smarter decisions and really optimize their sales for the modern buyer, which is very different than when the initial marketing automation platforms were built. It's a different world. There's a different level of data, and there's a different buying process. So we're going after that sort of space in terms of becoming like a very actionable data platform. But when we went in to pitch our idea, we didn't want to pitch a data platform, so we wanted to come up with an application. So we actually built an application for the pitch that kind of demonstrated what this looks like. And we built a map that said, here's all the visitors to your website. And we used a temperature algorithm when we turned them different colors. And we said, like, these are good prospects. They should get unique experiences.
Wow.
These are not good prospects. You should put up blockers for them. And it was funny because we ended up productizing that into the product. But that was really for demonstrating the capabilities in the data platform. And obviously that's lent itself very well to AI. So we think of ourselves as kind of like a data platform, but at the same time, we built a lot of applications on top of that platform. So that was kind of the genesis of Qualified, and we've been working on it for 5 years. But it's a platform model.
Scott, I might want to hear more about Norwest. What makes y'all stand out amongst other VC firms? You're in San Francisco. There's, dozens and hundreds of amazing firms. What makes y'all different and stand out?
Well, Norwest is, first of all, we've been doing this for over 60 years, and there aren't a lot of firms that can say that. We're, I think, one of the most highly diversified firms that you'll run across. We invest in everything from fashion brands to healthcare technologies and processes to B2B software, B2C software, everything under the sun, and we do it all across the planet. So we're doing it here in North America, two locations in California, in Israel, and also in India. And so, for me, again, coming back to, why do we do what we do? Life is really all about experiencing, learning, and doing it with people that you really enjoy doing it with. And when I met the team at Norwest, the first thing that really clicked for me was these are good people, first of all, down-to-earth people, but they're also builders. They're the kind of people that really, really know how to build great companies and great products. Because a lot of the investors at Norwest, and there's 150 people worldwide, and a lot of us are investors, a lot of people have built companies of their own. Co-founded or been an operator in one form or another, and that's, to me, that was really attractive, and it's played out really great. And I, appreciate these guys looking at Norwest in the same way that I did, which is it's a platform. It's not just me. It's a whole platform of people that can hopefully help a lot build companies.
How do you respond to the argument of, or just the conversation around a generalist investor, which I'm not sure you'd call a Norwest generalist, maybe you do, versus a specialized investor? You want to go to someone who is focused fully on, for example, fintech versus Norwest, who also invests in fintech, but we also invest in several other sectors.
Well, it's kind of like saying Salesforce is a generalist, and it's not.
Yeah.
Right? Salesforce is one of the best companies in a number of key areas and pillars. And I think Norwest has specialized in a lot of different, very important areas. Right. I mean, B2B SaaS is one of them, and that's all I do. I think, when you start to slice it different ways, we become specialists in AI, and not just Gen AI, but machine learning, deep learning, even before that, neural nets. We've been investing in AI for decades. And so I guess there's, you start to slice it by industry, and then you slice it by sort of what use cases or what technologies you're using. And so there's different partners who are highly specialized. We have MDs in the partnership who invest in, what we're gonna all take for granted 10 years from now in medicine, to specialists across the lending industry in India, for example. And so I think the answer to the question is it's a very large platform.
Okay.
And so we can be specialized in different areas as you look at different sections.
Jackson asked this question to somebody recently, and I thought it was really cool because I like the answers that were given. So I want to ask you guys, and it's actually a difficult question. What is most important to you in your life?
Wow. Well, that's an easy one. You want to take that one?
What's most important in life? The older you get, the more you realize life goes fast. Our time on this planet is pretty short, and time is finite. So, for me, it's about spending time with people that I want to be around. I've kind of fashioned my life and my job working around people that I really want to be around. And that's why, we chose Scott as an investor. That's why I work with the team I work with at Qualified. And obviously my friends and family are important too. So, as you get older, you start to realize how short your time is on this earth. So really for me, it's about spending that time with people who you want to spend time with.
Quick follow-up on that. Probably another hard question. What does it mean to be a good friend?
Well, I think empathy, right? I think it's, you quoted someone earlier about this, and I think at the end of the day, it's about, thinking as much about them as you do about yourself. And I think, it's a two-way street, and, being friends with someone is no different than any relationship, except that, you're all in and invested in that relationship. There's only so many of those you can have. So like real friends, you spend time, you work at it, and it's a two-way street. So I think you choose those people, and those are the ones you invest in. And over time, you know a lot of people, but you have friends that are real friends.
Yeah, well said. I would layer on top of I think the spending time with the people that matter most, which I think is foundational. I just layer on top of that the experiences that you create with those people, because again, life is short, and we create. I think if you could encapsulate life at the end of life, which hopefully none of us are anywhere near, but if I can imagine looking back, I would think about two things. I would think about the people I loved and cared about the most, and I would think about the things that we did together and the memories that we created together. So what we're doing right here, we're creating a memory. It's a different type of memory than some of the things we'll do with our families, but this is special stuff. I mean, we're building together, we're creating together, and we're creating hopefully something that becomes, generational, that lives even beyond us and our careers. And that to me is pretty exciting.
Do you have an upcoming memory making moment with your family here soon?
Yeah, tonight. We're going to be Sean's going to be joining us.
No way.
In a at our house here, we have a music studio.
Dude, I've seen you on Zoom before with that.
Yes, and so again, about creating experiences with people you love, we are going to, and Sean is going to participate. He doesn't realize he's going to participate.
Oh, he's doing it for the first time right now.
He's going to participate in a live multi-hour jam session.
You're kidding.
And the reason I put him on the spot is because when we're on Zoom together, he has a guitar in the background. Now, I've never heard him play guitar, but that tells me that he at least knows what a guitar is.
It's a Zoom background, actually.
That is enough for me. So we're going to have probably about 8-10 of us tonight. And
Sean, do you accept?
I'm more of a roadie. I do accept. I mean, I've always wanted to see. Scott's a very talented musician, very accomplished, talented musician. Not so much on this, but I'm excited to see a studio, and I'm excited to see these guys jam, and maybe they have beer.
That's pretty cool that y'all are like truly walking the talk. You talking about all these, making experiences with friends and just sharing those important memories, and then you're going to go do it tonight. So I think that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a big foundational piece. When we work with Scott and we don't feel like we're working a lot of the times. We feel like we're trying to navigate experiences and make decisions together, and we have a good time while we're doing it. That's one thing we've learned over the years is like, you want to work with the people that are really great at what they do. They're passionate about what you're doing, and you really enjoy spending time with them. And that's been like, I think the Qualified has been all about that for me. It's probably my final company. And, we wanted investors, and we wanted employees, and we wanted leaders that you really are going to look back on with fondness, and you're going to remember it really fondly. So that's kind of how we fashioned this company.
I have a music question for you, Scott. I know you love jazz. I think you like house music.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is there someone making music right now, a modern artist, that you really just listen to over and over and over again?
Quite a few. So I think a lot of people criticize the music industry now for not having as much talent as it once did. And I disagree. I think that there's a lot of artists who are heavily produced, and I think that's where that comes from. But there's also a lot of amazing musicians, like Jacob Collier, for example. He is one of the most talented musicians I've ever seen in my life. And you can think back to, Bill Evans, you can think about Madonna and Beyonce and like all these incredible musicians, pop musicians, jazz musicians through the years. Jacob Collier is like in his 20s. And he's like a virtuoso on maybe a dozen instruments, and I'm maybe underestimating.
Wow.
And he's selling out stadiums now, and he gets the audience to sing with him, and he composes harmonies across different sections of the audience. People who are not professional singers, but he makes them into like this amazing choir.
Freddie Mercury.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So he's taken some tips from, some of the greats too. But yeah, I think there's some amazing musicians that are just coming on the scene right now. And the cool thing about the way that AI is helping to democratize the music industry is that we're starting to see that mid-market start to really grow, where it used to be the music industry was dominated by the big celebrities. Yeah. And then like little like guys would get a coffee shop gig. But the guys in the middle, it was hard to really break through. But now with streaming platforms, with new other, artist platforms, we are now seeing, this is a stat I heard the other day, it's a crazy stat. Well, we are seeing now 40 new artists per month compared to 20 years ago, 4.
Wow.
And that's mostly because of the internet, the platforms, and just the availability of new music and playlists and stations and all kinds of things like that. So it's a pretty cool time, I think, to be a musician. I don't count myself in that anymore. I'm a has-been, but it's definitely a cool time for the music industry.
And you wouldn't say that that massive surge of quantity will necessarily be the detriment to quality. You would say that even though there's more of it, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're gonna that it becomes a wash, I guess, and you kind of can't find those diamonds in the rough because there's just so many artists. Is that a worry, or is it you're saying more quantity means more quality?
Well, the quantity was always there. We just never found it because they got stonewalled by the major labels. I mean, in the 80s, if you're a very talented, like exceptionally talented musician, you'd send your demo tape to, Capitol Records, and nobody listens to it. Maybe they did, whatever. You never get a call back. You're kind of like the independent label scene wasn't as big as it is now. So you didn't really have too many avenues to be heard. And so I think now there's so many. If I was a brand new guitarist who was trying to put out my first album, I can get it onto Spotify now. There are paths I can use to basically put my music out there, and thousands of new songs are going online every single day. So that's, I think, quantity and quality are very sort of non-correlated in that way. I think the quality and the quantity was always there, but we just didn't have a chance to see it.
Got it.
I wonder if there's any overlap, and it sounds like there is, with startups, say in the 90s and 80s versus startups now. Like, I'm not sure how the scene was back then with pitching to VCs or even finding who the VCs were in town. But now, like, if you have a product, you can put it on Product Hunt. You can go live on, social platforms and, get big on LinkedIn and Twitter and on X, and you can meet VCs that way in ways you've never could before. And I'm wondering if there's overlap there, Sean.
Yeah, look, I think there are parallels. I mean, you're talking about one of the biggest challenges as a startup is distribution, right? And what Scott's talking about is there's Tidal and SoundCloud and Spotify and YouTube, and there's ways to immediately get distribution for, your art. And that's very different. Also, the barrier to entry to starting a business. My first company, we had rack-mounted servers in my apartment. When we shared a rack of servers in a data center. And now there's, they've started with EC2 and there's AWS and there's infrastructure like you can spin up in seconds. And the barrier to entry is much less than it was, but I think also distribution. So I think there are definitely parallels.
Thank you so much for sitting with us and being on the Pitch Perfect podcast.
Yeah. If y'all want to look into the camera also and like share, where people can find you, Scott, people can find you, Sean, where to find the firm, the startup, and explain, where people can find you and hear more about you.
Yeah. Why don't you first let them know about Qualified and yourself?
Sean Whiteley. I'm co-founder of qualified.com. Or qualified.ai, either one. We own them both. If you need more pipeline for your sales team, pay us a visit.
Scott Beechuk with Norwest Venture Partners, nvp.com. You can get me on X at sbeechuk, Beechuk, no C at the end. And we're always interested, excited to talk to new founders, building cool things. Never been a better time to start a new company.
Awesome. Scott, Sean, we appreciate it. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.